Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Another Saturday in the books, another Sunday afternoon with the AP poll top 25 coming out. Of course, the boys have some problems with the Dill. I will say this, not as many problems with these rankings as I've had in the past with the AP poll. Still got some problems. Want to go over some teams that we think are overrated, some teams that are being underrated. Fired up to get into it now. Before we do it, as always, and I think most importantly, let it fly in the comment section. There has been a ton of great college football conversation that's been going on in the comment section when we break down the top 25. Whether you agree with the boys, whether you disagree, like that is the beauty of college football. So let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, as always, let's start with some teams that are overrated in the AP poll top 25. Who you got for us?
I know you're not going to love this one, but I think Miami, two
No.
spots too high. They belong behind Tennessee and LSU. I look at the way those two teams are coming on. LSU's defense is really starting to play some good football. Tennessee is just a really good team. That's a great, great defense. Probably want more from Nico, but I look at what Miami's been. I mean, their secondary is just not coming together. It's like, again, how long can we go? Oh, they're just giving up a couple explosive. That's all it is. And that's still kind of all it is. But now that's become a running theme for 3 games. And you can't play that way if you're going to go win a national championship, I think. And again, I like that offense for sure. But I look at those two teams, I just think they're a little more complete. And until Miami shows me that their secondary is not like a glaring fault, if you will, give me those other two.
Okay, so the problem I have with this, I'm just going to start with the question. Give me the best offense, best quarterback in the country right now in your mind.
Cam Ward.
It's
In
gotta be
Miami.
so my problem with this is, yeah, Miami's got some question marks in the secondary 100%, but there's also some aspects of this Miami team that I think are elite. It starts with the quarterback position, but I think on aggregate, like this Miami Hurricanes offense, I don't think there's an offense in the country that I'm taking over them. Their ability to run the football, especially with what you just saw last or Saturday against Louisville. The thing is, all of these teams outside of some of the top teams, and I would argue that every single team in college football right now, we don't have like a juggernaut team. I think Oregon's clearly the number 1 team in the country. All these teams have question marks. A lot of these teams have question marks at quarterback. Like a team that you're arguing to put ahead of them in Tennessee, I think like Nico has shown some flashes, but I don't think he's been a really, really complete quarterback yet. I'm going to lean with the team that I trust to put up points with a quarterback that I think's the best in the country. Look, I get it. Like Miami has shown some flaws, but I'd rather bet on the flaws of a secondary than the flaws of a quarterback. So I will push back with you on Miami. Hey, that's the beauty of it. You knew that'd work me up too. I didn't fall for the bait. I thought I was relatively composed, and I let you talk the whole time. A lot of people get mad at me in the comment section for interrupting you. Dill, I'm going to go to my team that's overrated, Iowa State again. Top 10 team. They're just, again, I'm going to be short with it because I've been very critical of Iowa State and how high they've been in the rankings. I get they're undefeated. You look at the body of work and say the 2 most impressive wins are I mean, the most impressive win I think on the schedule is a 1-point victory against Iowa, who just turned around and lost to Michigan State outright this Saturday. I look at Iowa State and say it's a solid football team. There's no arguing that, but I don't think it's a special football team. And there are some teams that are really, really good in the top 15 that should be top 10 teams. I don't think Iowa State is one of them. They just went to the wire against UCF. They needed the last minute in that football game to be the UCF team that I think stinks out loud and went to a backup quarterback. In fact, I know I've been critical of the Big 12 in general. I would put BYU over Iowa State because you look at BYU and say they beat Kansas State badly. They go on the road and beat an SMU team that's also a top 25 team. You look at BYU's body of work and Iowa State's body of work, they're both undefeated. I would take BYU. It's been a more impressive team. They've had more impressive wins than Iowa State. But again, I just have question marks about how good the Big 12 is when you compare them to some other conferences, specifically teams in the Big 10 in the SEC.
And I agree with you 100%. Like, I look, like, do I really think Alabama loses to either of those teams? No chance.
No.
Do I think A&M loses to either of those teams? Definitely not. So
Let's talk about Indiana. Another team that kind of was in the similar boat last week, right? Like, how good is Indiana actually? They've looked very, very good on the football field. Haven't really played anybody. They play Nebraska. We said that was the game we'd figure out what Indiana is. They went 56-7, put up over five or almost 500 total yards on one of the better defenses that we see in the country, Nebraska. Still, Indiana, you talk about undefeated teams that maybe deserve a little bit more respect. I think you're looking at one with them Indiana Hoosiers.
And I still don't get it. Like, I'm almost like, are they just like the Leicester City version of college football? Like, shout out the Premier League if anyone's a fan of that. I know
Nope.
they won. They were a big underdog, won the Premier League. I digress. But like, is that what they are? Like, did he just take a culture of JMU, a bunch of older, experienced guys who are just winners and tough as nails, and move it right into Indiana and not skip a beat? I mean, again, I still doubt it, and I'll doubt it until like they beat Ohio State or something crazy. But I mean, at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding. This team, this offense just feels Curtis Rourke's playing so good. Those wide receivers catch every ball that gets in their airspace. I don't really know. Like Nebraska didn't play necessarily bad. Their offense was pretty bad, I thought.
Yeah.
But their defense, I don't know what they could have done different in a lot of those plays. Indiana was just making really good plays.
Like Curtis Rourke, the ball placement is incredible. And you said it best. Like it was like some back shoulders, some face of the end zone where these Indiana wide receivers just continue to come down with really, really impressive catches. And I think we were just kind of sitting there and saying, is this sustainable? Like, is this Indiana team actually that good and actually that talented? Like that's a team that I'd have over Iowa State and BYU because I think they haven't necessarily played the toughest schedule, but they've played, I think, a really good team in Nebraska and absolutely took them to the cleaners. This Indiana team, I think might be legit. And I'm kind of with you. Like it's going to take me a while to kind of get used to Indiana being like a top 15 team, but I think it might be a top 15 team in the country. You got any more teams that you think are overrated in this top 25 here?
I think I'm good on the overrated. I think I actually kind of want the back end of it.
I got one. Ohio State. That's an underrated one. I was already moving to my notes to underrated teams. Let's go into underrated teams.
Ohio State is underrated. I was gonna say maybe I'd say Georgia's a bit overrated, and that's only because I think Ohio State I'd probably have above Georgia right now, just because Ohio State, aside from just a really well executed game from Oregon, they've shown no flaws. Georgia still has some flaws out there. I still really question what they are as an offensive football team. That defense now, and so like they showed that when they're on and that D line's kind of rolling, they can be a real problem because like Jalen Walker, great. Michael Williams, great. Damon Wilson had a really, really nice game. So that team has a high ceiling, like a championship high ceiling. I think they certainly proved that, but I still don't love that offense, frankly.
They averaged 4 yards per play against Texas. Like they scored 30 points, but a lot of those came from short yardage or kind of short fields and turnovers. I think what it comes down to me, and it's a little bit more the eyeball test, and that's kind of what you have to do when you're comparing teams cross conference here. Like Texas has to win on the road against Michigan. Michigan flat out stinks. Watch the Oregon and Ohio State game, and then watch the Georgia Texas game, and say what quality of football was higher. Where's the execution better? I think it was clearly Oregon and Ohio State. And so I look at Ohio State and say, I can see the argument for Penn State as the number 2 team in the country because I think that they're undefeated. The offense looks to be clicking, but they'll right now, after 8 weeks of football, I think my argument would be Oregon and Ohio State are the 2 best teams in the country. Yeah, I think the top end of the Big Ten is just as good, if not quite frankly better than what we've seen so far from the SEC. And I'm not saying the SEC can't. I wouldn't be surprised if an SEC team wins a national championship, but I think a lot of SEC fans would agree. You watch the Oregon-Ohio State game, and then you watch even the Tennessee-Alabama game and say, like, what out of the top end teams of both of those conferences, what has been more impressive football? I would argue that Oregon and Ohio State were the 2 most impressive teams in the country when they played 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, no, that's actually my first underrated. It was going to be Ohio State, and it pains me to say, Michigan guy, it makes me a little sick to think that they might win a national championship this year. But at the end of the day, you like that defense, really, really good offense. Will Howard played awesome against Oregon. That's kind of the question. Can he score at the rate they need him to score at to compete with really, really good teams? I think he did his part, frankly. I think, again, like their defensive pass rush, probably not good enough in that Oregon game, but again, you look at the talent they have on the field, they can go toe-to-toe with anyone, and they just haven't shown those glaring flaws. That's the one thing. Like, you've seen some real issues from Georgia, I think. Same thing with teams like Tennessee, LSU, Miami. Texas, I don't know that you have yet, although, like, Georgia did just kind of I mean, they kind of
That's
slapped
hard.
them.
Texas is a tough one because you look at Texas and say they've looked so good. Like we had them as the number one team in the country 3 days ago before they played Georgia. I can't tell if that was just a really bad football game in a big moment, or is this Texas team maybe a little bit overrated and they haven't really played any good teams up until Georgia. That's kind of to be determined. I lean towards Texas still being a very good football team, but there might have been an overreaction to trouncing a Michigan team that we thought was going to be decent, and they flat out stunk. Jury's still out on Texas. Moving through it, Dill, I, I'm happy to see Clemson back. At least they jumped Iowa State. Like that Clemson team's good, man. And that defense is very good. We know how talented that is. The big question was how good is this Clemson offense going to be? Every single week, it seems like and I don't even think Cade's played good the last couple of weeks, but they're explosive. They're running the football like a top 10 team. They got a top 10 rushing offense in the country. We always said like this Clemson team can be really dangerous if this offense takes a step. We've seen clearly that offense take a step. I would love to see a Clemson Georgia rematch because I'm not saying Clemson would win outright. I think it'd be a lot more competitive than what the country saw week one of the college football season.
Yeah, I love where they have Clemson. I don't think you can put them higher
I think it's
yet
fair.
because
Yeah.
you can't go get your doors blown off the way they did against Georgia and jump some really, really good teams. I mean, those three teams behind Texas, they're really, really good. So I like where Clemson is. I think again, like, is there a world that I think they really are even competitive with either of those Big 12 schools? Not really, frankly. I don't see how those two score much on that Clemson team. I think Clemson can. Again, they're not shut down defenses either for those Big 12 squads. So I like where Clemson's at. I got no issue with that.
They're finally kind of getting we were banging the table for Clemson when they were the 21st best team in the country, and the argument is like what's the best defense they've played since Georgia? Like it had like NC State's not the defense we thought they were going to be, but at least they didn't look like this in 2023 on offense, even when they were playing bad defenses. So it's clear that this offense in Cade Klubnik have gotten better. Iowa State and BYU, I've kind of shared my piece with them. Notre Dame at 12, still over Texas A&M. That's been kind of that conversation we've had where I would argue that Texas A&M's looked like a better football team since they have lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is, we know that's good. They're starting to run the football really well. I think the overall question is Riley Leonard that guy when you go play really good college football teams? Is he a quarterback that you can lean on to go score and go toe for toe with some of those teams that are top 10 in the country? What's your
I think he's finding his footing a little bit. I mean, there was a period for like a couple weeks where it wasn't just like, again, is he a great quarterback who's going to light it up passing the ball? No, that's just not his game. But he's running the ball very effectively for them, and he's found like he's not missing throws that just make my jaw drop. Like what you missed that throw? He's kind of leveled himself off. Again, I don't think he is maybe exactly what I thought he was going to be. I still look at that Duke tape from 2 years ago and think, where is that Riley Leonard? I don't think that's coming back this year at the end of the day, but he has kind of found his level, if you will, and he's playing good enough for them to be very competitive.
And he's also giving Notre Dame what they need in the ground game. Like, you make no mistake about it, this Notre Dame team's not going to throw for 400 yards every single game. Like, they want to run the football and play good defense, and because Riley Leonard's the athlete that he is, he's a much better fit than a guy like Sam Hartman was last year. I would argue that Texas A&M and Alabama are probably underrated. Like, I think it's pretty clear. Like, I take Texas A&M and Bama neutral site against Iowa State and BYU. That being said, like, I think Texas A&M's an underrated team. I said that last week. What do you think about Alabama 15?
I had them underrated. I still like.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe, aside from that Tennessee game, and he was pretty bad in that Tennessee game. That was the first time I looked like, oh, he's missing some gross ones here.
Yeah.
He's been really good for the most part this year, even against the South Carolina. I don't think he played incredible, but I don't put that game on him. I mean, their offensive line wasn't playing particularly great. I don't think that offensive line is as good as I thought it was going to be. Like, after that Georgia game, I was like, oh, this Bama offensive line might be great. I don't think they're great. Their tackle play, still not ideal. I mean, Tennessee was really kind of getting after him, but I mean, he still has an argument for having played like a top 3 quarterback, I'd say, in the country. So to have them at 15, I still think they're talented. Now, Kane Womack, God, like, he's got to figure something out because they keep doing the same. They're playing the same defense. They're giving up a lot of space down the field in that man cover scheme they're running. They got to find some answer because like he is not doing his job there. They're too good on defense to do it, but like I still think they're probably around 10. I don't think they're like the 15th best team in the
Yeah,
country.
Alabama's played some bad football, but we've also seen them play some. They're kind of an inconsistent team right now. And that's not what you're used to saying about Alabama teams under Nick Saban. That's kind of what you're getting under Kalen DeBoer so far. There's a lot to still like about Alabama. And again, that Alabama offense, that Tennessee defense is arguably the best defense in the country. I'm still a believer in Alabama, but you're kind of right. There are some glaring holes, specifically on the offensive line. Kansas State, good with it. Like Boise State, well, I'll keep giving Boise State their flowers. Ole Miss is a team where it's like they deserve to be the 18th ranked team in the country. That being said, they're also a team that can beat the number one team in the country. Like I think that Ole Miss defense is still very, very good. I think that offense has the capability of being very, very good. They just haven't been. I'm interested, like Dill, that Ole Miss team when you build through the transfer portal and you have some things not go your way early in the season. Like,
Yeah.
how does this team respond coming out of the bye week? They're going to be a fascinating team that has the ability to really throw a wrench in the college football playoffs because I do think they have the capability of beating just about any team in the country with how talented that roster is.
But that's where they belong because that's where they're playing.
Agreed.
I don't have any issue. Like they're a team I want to say is underrated, but they're really not. I mean, they've played Kentucky is not a good team. You can't be playing a competitive one with them. South Carolina is a good win, but even that, I think that was much more South Carolina playing. I mean, that's
Bad
a very inconsistent team, and they got a very bad version of South Carolina. So they were able to put it on them because South Carolina was turning the ball over and making horrific plays. But they're not playing great football against good teams. So that's where they belong.
Pitt undefeated.
Pitt and Illinois, I feel like, are the same team. Like good executing teams, very low ceilings in a sense. I don't think they have the top end talent to do a ton necessarily nationally, but they're really good executing teams and they win their games.
I would say Illinois is that team. Pitt, you look at the underlying metrics of Pitt, and there are some concerns. They're giving up a lot of sacks. Eli Holstein, although the numbers look really good, like the turnover worthy plays are a concern. He's top 10 in the country in that metric. But that offense can put up points, and the defense has low key been playing a little bit better too. So I'm not again, they're undefeated. They've had some good wins. I'm not going to get up here and say Pitt shouldn't be a top 20 team. The last team I want to talk about, shout out Vandy getting ranked, SMU at 2022. This team is dangerous and figured it out on offense. The last 4 games, they've put up over 400 yards in all 4 games. That's the SMU offense that we expected. They're playing solid defense, but the biggest storyline is they went to Kevin Jennings. One, they're only lost to BYU without or like kind of playing that 2 quarterback system, which is not a bad loss. Like BYU is a top 15 team in the country, but more importantly, keep an eye on SMU because one, I think they're playing much better football with Kevin Jennings, but more importantly, Dill, that schedule, they will be favorites in every single one of their games throughout the rest of the season. SMU going 11-1, potentially making an ACC championship game. That's going to be, I guarantee you, we're going to have that conversation come the end of November about this SMU team, and they're playing really, really dang good football down the stretch here.
I actually had them as an underrated team, and I think you kind of summed up the reason. I look like their ceiling's higher than a lot of the teams. Like their ceiling's higher in Pitt, Illinois. Frankly, I think Kansas State and Boise State. So I look like that team. I mean, they're really, really good on offense. Kevin Jennings just seems like no one's found an answer from it. I don't think that's a bad Stanford team, frankly. They're not a great Stanford team. I don't want to get up there and say like they're the best. But that Stanford team's given some teams problems. Like they gave Clemson some problems, especially on the defense side of the ball. I mean, SMU just kind of ran them off the field.
And again, like the schedule's there, man. Like I really do think we're going to be having a conversation about SMU. Whether I believe they're a top 12 team or not, there's going to be a conversation towards the end of the season about SMU.
Last one. Do you think Mizzou, like that was a weird game that they just played with Auburn, but Brady Cook coming back, went to the hospital, got his MRI, came back, won that game. Do you think that can maybe like be a springboard for them to get a little magic going and start playing some good football? Because that's still a team very similar to Ole Miss. I look like on paper, they can go be very competitive with anyone. Now they're not playing close to that, but I don't know. Maybe you can get a little magic in the air now.
No, not really. I mean, like I've been like the Missouri fans know I've been holding on hope, man. Like I really have been because they were a preseason pick of mine to make the playoffs. They haven't looked like the playoff team. And like, what does Stephen A. Smith say? Like, if it looks like it, sounds like it, it ain't it. Like I don't think I got the saying right. Missouri hasn't played like a college football playoff team. They haven't looked like a college football playoff team. Right now, I'm not ready to say they're a college football playoff team until they show me and start looking like they can do it. They're going to have an opportunity. Yeah, they're going to have an opportunity this weekend. Dill, I think you got one more last shot at a team that should be in the top 25 that's not hit us with it.
South Carolina. You look at those two defense ends. Do I think most of these teams can even like have some semblance of an answer for them? No, they should be in the top 25. I think Lenore Sellers, frankly, it's slow coming. He's still doing some things that really frustrate you if you're a South Carolina fan, but he's starting to play better football. He's making less turnovers. They're starting to get at least some semblance of a base offense they can run that's moderately effective. I think South Carolina is unbelievably good on defense. Their offense, not good, but it's coming along. They should be a top 25 team.
Sounds like you were talking about South Carolina like you talked about Arkansas last week. And they're two they're two tricky teams to figure out. Like, it's kind of a roller coaster, but they are those teams that can play up to their opponents. We'll close it out there. Again, let it fly in the comment section. The amount of support for these episodes has been amazing. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.